There are countless high-quality completed novels with satisfying plots. Half of them are here with Lou Obo's recommendations. The entire story is delivered in one go. The exciting tale begins now. Just after finishing my confinement period, I decided to divorce my husband. My mother-in-law smugly said, "Divorce if you want. The house won't be divided with you. If you have the guts, go and reclaim the renovation fees your family paid." I sneered. I brought in a moving company and a demolition team and tore the house down to its bare bones. I completed my confinement period at my parents' home because I gave birth to a daughter. My mother-in-law treated me with utter disdain, looking at me with contempt in her eyes. She threatened that I shouldn't expect her to help care for the child. She even said I should call my mom to take care of the confinement period. Since getting married, I've heard countless times from her that my husband forgot his mother after marrying me. My husband remained silent each time, thinking back to how my mother-in-law nitpicked at me for this reason, constantly looking for excuses to cause trouble. I felt truly wronged. When I was discharged from the hospital, I directly took my child back to my parents' home. Today marks the end of my confinement. My husband, Lin Kun, came to take me home. Upon arriving, my mother-in-law didn't even glance at the child, sarcastically saying to me, "So you finally decided to come back." My father-in-law stood quietly on the side without saying a word. I went straight to my own room. Dinner was brought in by Lin Kun, a small portion of green vegetables, and half a plate of stir-fried chicken chunks. I took a bite, but couldn't even chew it. Normally, stir-fried chicken is quite delicious. Maybe because of the postpartum recovery, or perhaps today's chicken was overly stir-fried. I forced myself to take a few more bites, but it was so tough that my teeth ached. I recalled my mom's words of advice. Although I've completed the confinement period, my body hasn't fully recovered yet. I should try to eat softer foods, or else I'll suffer in the long run. Thinking of my mom, a sudden wave of grievance welled up inside me. I furrowed my brows and called out to Lin Kun twice, but he didn't respond, probably didn't hear me. I sighed deeply, picked up the plate of stir-fried chicken and went out, thinking of asking Lin Kun to stew it for me instead. When I reached the living room, I saw them happily eating as a family of 3. In the electric pot was tender, fragrant stewed chicken. I was completely speechless. So they served me the stir-fried tough stuff. While they were enjoying the soft and tender stewed chicken, Lin Kun noticed I had come out, stood up to greet me. "Hey Ting Ting, you're out." I pointed at the chicken on my plate. "My chicken is stir-fried." Lin Kun nodded. My mom said, "The tender chicken tastes better stir-fried. You should eat more." I shoved the plate into his arms. "Then have your mom eat it right here in front of you." Lin Kun didn't understand why I was angry. He frowned and looked at his mother. She let out a cold snort, got up and took the chicken from Lin Kun's hands, and dumped it directly into the electric pot. "If you don't like it, then don't eat it." I looked at the thick layer of chili peppers in the pot and asked Lin Kun, "What are you planning to feed me tonight?" Lin Kun's frown deepened. "Ding, aren't you being too picky? My mom worked hard to make this chicken for you, and you refused to eat it. Now you're asking what I'll feed you tonight. Aren't you just making things difficult for me?" The warmth in my heart was gradually turning cold. At this moment, it felt like a part of me had been hollowed out. Just a few days ago, Lin Kun was still telling me that once our child grows older, he would ask his parents to return to their hometown. Why wait until then? Suddenly, I lost the energy to argue. I went back to my room, ate those few bites of green vegetables, and swallowed the bowl of white rice with tears. The next morning, a lot of relatives came to visit. As soon as I stepped out of my room, my mother-in-law greeted me. She even did the unprecedented thing of handing me a cup of brown sugar water. I didn't really want to take it, but with everyone in the room watching, I had no choice but to accept it. I took a sip and immediately spit it out. "This is way too damn sweet." Did she dump an entire jar of sugar in there? "Fang Ting Ting, what do you mean by this?" I'm still considering the fact that you gave birth to a child for our Lin family. I kindly offered you some sugar water, and you spit it out like this. What's that supposed to mean? With other relatives around. I didn't want to cause a scene. I could only whisper, Mom, it's just too sweet. I'm not used to drinking something like this. Too sweet. When you eat chocolate? Why don't you say it's too sweet then? Can sugar water be sweeter than that stuff? I see, you're just finding fault with me. Your mother-in-law just came back home and already you're trying to show me who's boss. As she spoke, my mother-in-law started wiping away tears. Seeing the relatives whispering to each other, I felt a headache coming on and rubbed my temples. I turned my head to look at Lin Kun, hoping he'd say something on my behalf. But there he was, sitting on the sofa playing games, not even bothering to lift his head. I originally wanted to swallow my frustration and bring it up later when everyone was gone. After all, it said that family shame should not be spread outside. Just then, Lin Kun's and stood up, and while helping my mother-in-law to the other end of the sofa, she sarcastically said, Sister-in-law, stop crying. Nowadays, aren't all daughters-in-law like this? Then she turned to me and ordered, Ting Ting, how about you go and cook for us? Everyone came to see you. We should at least eat before leaving. I almost thought I heard wrong. This whole family actually wants a person who just finished confinement to cook for them. I pointed at myself and repeated, you want me to cook? My mother-in-law stopped crying and even gave a smile. As a daughter-in-law, isn't it normal for you to cook at home? All eyes turned to me. One of my cousins, seemingly unable to stand it, said, we don't have to eat. Ting Ting just finished her confinement. But my mother-in-law immediately jumped in. So what if she just finished confinement? Does that mean she can't cook? When we had children, we were up and about the next day. My cousin fell silent. I tightened my grip on the child and gave Lin Kun a kick. Your mom said I should cook. Lin Kun lifted his eyelids slightly. Then just cook. I'll help you. He put away his phone, stood up with a cheerful smile, and handed the baby to his aunt. Lin Kun came over to pull my hand. I forcefully shook it off. It took a deep breath to suppress the discomfort in my heart. Lin Kun looked at me, puzzled, his face showing some displeasure as well. I pulled him directly into the bedroom. Ting Ting, what are you doing? He asked, confused. With so many guests at home, you're giving everyone the cold shoulder like this? Lin Kun, I just finished my confinement, and your mom is already asking me to cook for the whole family, and you won't even say a word in my defense? I looked at his impatient expression and felt the disappointment inside me almost drowning me. I closed my eyes. Memories of everything that happened during my confinement flashed through my mind. Lin Kun obediently following his mom's advice, swearing that it was all for my own good. Or when his mom said that women during confinement shouldn't be exposed to the cold or shouldn't use the air conditioner. And then Lin Kun secretly hid the remote from me. Those bizarre incidents were just the tip of the iceberg. When our baby cried at night, he would only lose his temper at me, blaming me for not taking good care. But he never even bothered to look at the child. Ting Ting, these are all relatives. Mom is just giving you a chance to show how virtuous you are. Lin Kun kept trying to persuade me. And besides, I'll help you too. You only need to put on a show, that's all. In that moment, I was absolutely sure that I was completely blind to have married him in the first place. I sneered at Lin Kun. Help me, you mean your mom is giving me an opportunity? Why don't you just live with your mom instead? After saying that, I pushed open the door and walked back to the living room. In the living room, my mother-in-law smirked provocatively when she saw me come out. Ting Ting, look at you. You've got quite a temper. I was just giving a suggestion, and you already pulled a face. In the hospital, you wouldn't even eat when told to. I had to bring the food right to you before you'd take a bite. And even during your confinement, you weren't cooperative. At your in-law's place, your mom-in-law serves you sugar water and you won't drink it. The chicken she painstakingly cooked, you complain it's too tough to chew. Now, when asked to cook a meal for the relatives, you're unwilling. Sai, the upbringing in your family is really something. I clenched my fists tightly, taking deep breaths repeatedly. After a moment, a smile appeared on my lips. I picked up the cup of sugar water from the table and walked towards my mother-in-law. I grabbed her hair with one hand and forced the sugar water down her throat. "Mom, does it taste good?" "Not too sweet, is it?" My mother-in-law struggled while spitting it out, choking on the sugar water and coughing violently. The room fell silent for a second. Then it erupted in chaos. "Fang Tingting, what are you doing?" Lincoln rushed over and slapped my hand away, while my father-in-law also hurried over. With fury in his eyes, he raised his hand and slapped me hard. "How dare you? You've turned the world upside down, and now you dare to lay hands on your mother-in-law?" My face stung as it was forced to one side, burning with pain. I looked to Lincoln one last time, holding onto a glimmer of hope, only to see him avoid my gaze, deliberately not looking at me. The last bit of light in my heart faded away. I pressed my lips together, stood up, and the crowd took a step back, as if they were guarding against me losing my mind. I walked straight over, grabbed my daughter from Lincoln's aunt's arms, and left the house without looking back. As I reached the door, my mother-in-law was still shouting, "Fang Tingting, if you walk out that door today, don't even think about coming back." My steps hesitated for a moment, but I didn't waver any longer, and I left without a single doubt. Step by step, I walked out. I held my daughter a little tighter in my arms. The little girl was awake, her large, dark eyes looking at me, so pure and innocent. My eyes stung with tears, and without realizing it, drops started to fall, one by one, landing on her clothes. I aimlessly walked towards my mother's house, holding my child. Memories of Lincoln kept flashing in my mind. Lincoln and I fell in love freely. Back then, I already knew he was a bit of a mama's boy, but at that time, I was blinded by love and thought it just showed that he was filial, not a major flaw. Besides, I was planning to be a good daughter-in-law and take care of his parents, so I didn't think this minor flaw would be a problem. After we got married, I treated my mother-in-law like my own mother. I considered her in everything, cared for her, but my goodwill was met with constant nitpicking from her. Day by day, my heart grew colder. Those bizarre stories you hear about difficult mothers-in-law, like barging into their son and daughter-in-law's room at night. She wasn't any different. Lincoln always acted as if it wasn't a big deal. Until I gave birth, I couldn't deliver naturally. The doctor recommended a C-section, but he refused to sign the consent form, ignoring my safety, insisting that only a naturally born child would be smart. If my parents hadn't arrived in time, I'm afraid we both would have been lost due to his stubbornness. What truly broke my heart was Lincoln's attitude. I could overlook the small things, but this was a matter of life and death. It was about my daughters and my own life. My mom told me that at the time, he just stood there with his head down, not saying a single word. After that, when I went back to my parents' home to do my confinement, he, along with his parents, even came to my mom's place, causing a huge scene. Thinking about all these incidents, the tears flowed even faster. When my mom found out that in just one day after I returned, such chaos had already broken out, she immediately jumped up in rage. "This life is unbearable. Old Fang, grab something. We're going to teach them a lesson." My dad quickly calmed her down. "Come on, we're civilized people. We can't handle things so violently." Then he turned to me. I shook my head without hesitation. "Every single thing that happened has made me lose faith in this marriage and in this man. Thinking about spending the rest of my life like this, it sent chills down my spine." After that, my dad directly took me to the police station to file a report for intentional injury. Soon enough, the whole Lin family was brought to the police station. As soon as my mother-in-law saw me, she started cursing, "Fang Tingting, you wretched jinx. Not only did you bully me, but now you've gone as far as filing a false police report. I'll beat you to death." As she said that, she lunged at me. The police held her back, and after a stern reprimand, She finally quieted down when the police began questioning what happened. My mother-in-law was the first to stand up, claiming that I forcefully poured the brown sugar water down her throat. The officer turned to look at me. I touched the swelling on my face and calmly recounted the entire situation. "Did she hit you?" the officer asked my mother-in-law. She hesitated but ultimately didn't dare to lie and shook her head. My dad spoke up. "But look at my granddaughter's face. It's swollen from the beating. She barely escaped death giving birth, and she just finished her confinement." I clearly saw a flash of sympathy in the police officer's eyes. In the end, the result was that my father-in-law was detained for 3 days and fined 500 yuan, not a heavy punishment, but enough to make a point. We finally got some justice. As we left the police station, my mother-in-law tried to lunge at me again. My dad quickly blocked her, pointing behind us. "The police station is right there. Do you want to go in and stay a few more days?" My mother-in-law deflated instantly, muttering curses under her breath, like a rooster who lost the fight. I turned and caught the resentment in Lin Kun's eyes. At that moment, I realized we had gone from lovers to enemies. My dad gave me half a month to think it over. He told me to consider it carefully. "If you still want to stay in this marriage, I'll stand up for you. And make sure your in-laws don't dare to mess with you again. But from then on, you'll be on your own. Whether life is bitter or sweet, you'll have to bear it yourself. But if you truly don't want to continue, then go for a divorce. We won't leave out a single penny you deserve, or any belongings you should get." Lincoln came by on the 7th day. He walked in, grinning, and called out, "Mom, Dad." Seeing no one paid him any attention, he put on a fake smile and came over to me. "Tinkt, don't be mad anymore. Come back home with me. It's been so many days without seeing you. I miss you and the baby." I kept a cold face and ignored him. Lincoln tried coaxing me a few more times, but when I didn't respond, he grew embarrassed and angry. "Fang Ting, don't act so ungrateful. You think you can hold onto this attitude and get away with it? You think I'll just give in?" My mom was right. Women can't be spoiled too much. The more you spoil them, the more they get out of hand. I'm the one who spoiled you from the start. I was completely done responding to him. My mom, fuming, grabbed a broom and chased him out of the house. After that, Lincoln came by a few more times. Each time, he'd start by smiling and trying to coax me. But when I didn't forgive him, he'd switch to insults and trying to put me down. Half a month later, I still chose to get a divorce. Some things, once they happen, can be remembered for a lifetime, especially a grudge held during the confinement period. If Lincoln had shown even a bit of responsibility back then, if he had protected me just a little, I might have been willing to stay and make it work. But his attitude completely crushed any hope I had. Maybe it's for the best. My dad brought me and 2 of my cousins to visit Lin Kun's home. I didn't bring my daughter. She stayed with my mom at home. My mother-in-law opened the door, and when she saw us, she looked like she wanted to scratch my face right then and there. But seeing the tall and strong cousins behind me, she thought better of it. With a sarcastic tone, she said, "The Fang family, what are you doing here? You're not welcome in our house." My dad smiled and said, "It's okay if we're not welcome. Just let us in, that's all. Of course, if you really don't want us inside, we can talk here in the hallway." Our family stands upright and has nothing to hide from gossip. While speaking, our neighbor, Aunt Wu, had already peeked her head out. I smiled and turned to greet her. My mother-in-law's face stiffened, and she grudgingly opened the door. She turned and went back inside. My dad patted my head reassuringly. My dad led the way into the house. As soon as we entered, I heard Lincoln in the room asking, "Mom, who is it?" My mother-in-law responded grumpily, "The Fang family." The next moment, Lincoln rushed out. When he saw me, he seemed stunned for a few seconds. Then he smiled and said, Ting, you're back. That's good." While saying that, he walked over to grab my hand. I forcefully shook off Lin Kun's hand. His face darkened as he said, "Fang Ting, how long are you going to keep this up? I sighed, took the divorce papers out of my bag and handed them over. Lin-kun, I'm not causing trouble. This is the divorce agreement. Please sign it. Lin-kun, confused, took the papers, but when he saw the words divorce agreement, his expression changed. Ting-ting, are you joking? We're doing just fine, aren't we? Why talk about divorce? I felt exhausted. There's no point in saying more. Let's part ways peacefully. My mother-in-law, seeing this, snatched the divorce papers from Lin-kun's hand. Divorce is great. My son is so outstanding. He can still find a young, fresh girl. You think anyone would want damaged goods like you? Lin-kun yelled at his mom, "Mom, can you please say less?" Then he turned back to me and grabbed my hand again. Ting-ting, it's just a few arguments. How did it escalate to divorce? As he spoke, he glanced up at my dad. Is it that you all don't like me and forced Ting-ting to divorce me? I knew it ever since we decided to get married. You all were dead set against it. I cut him off. Lin-kun, my decision to divorce has nothing to do with them. It's between you and me. This has nothing to do with my family. Even now, you still don't wonder why I'm so determined to divorce you right after finishing my confinement. HMPH, if it's not your family pushing you, then it must be because you've got another man outside. Lin-kun shouted these words angrily. After saying that, he glared with bloodshot eyes, sweeping his gaze across the people behind me. Suddenly, he lunged at one of my cousins. You're Fang Ting-ting's lover, aren't you? I knew it. These past few months, Fang Ting-ting's been looking at me with nothing but contempt in her eyes. It's obvious she's had a change of heart. My cousin was caught off guard by the sudden attack, and Lin-kun managed to grab him tightly. My cousin also got angry. Lin, why don't you take a good look at the mess you've made? You have the nerve to talk nonsense here? What did I do? What exactly did I do wrong? I don't gamble. I don't sleep around, and I don't hit my wife. I've practically treated Fang Ting-ting like a queen. What more do you want from me? Lin-kun screamed hysterically. My head buzzed with numbness. It took me a moment to snap out of it. I hurried forward to pull Lin-kun away. Lin-kun, are you crazy? That's my cousin. Let go of him. After struggling, I finally managed to separate them. Then I heard my mother-in-law shouting at Lin-kun. Lin-kun, have some backbone, will you? So what if it's a divorce? You think you can't find another woman after a divorce? Is it worth begging like this? Lin-kun froze in place. His mother gave him a fierce glare, then threw the divorce agreement in front of him. You idiot! You're still here hesitating over her. Look at how she's thinking. She wants custody of the child, half of the house, and 2,000 yuan a month in child support. Lin-kun muttered, I'm not divorcing. You idiot! Are you trying to kill your old mother from anger? Isn't this exactly what she's using to manipulate you? Take a look at her. Who would want her after the divorce? My mother-in-law yanked Lin-kun back, then aggressively said, that little girl, you can have her if you want. But the house, no way you're getting half. That down payment was paid by our Lin family. After the wedding, you didn't even go to work. And you didn't contribute to the mortgage either. I sneered, you must have forgotten. We agreed before the wedding. You'd pay the down payment, and my family would cover the renovation costs. The renovations alone cost 200,000 yuan. And the furniture and appliances were all bought by me, which cost nearly another 100,000 yuan. Sure, I haven't worked for 2 years since we got married, but before I got pregnant, I did all the housework. Hiring a housekeeper would cost money, right? The housing prices in this county aren't even that high, only about 5,000 or 6,000 yuan per square meter. This house is worth, at most, 700,000 to 800,000 yuan. Is it unreasonable for me to take half? My mother-in-law pointed at my nose and cursed. What do you know? In any case, you're not getting a share of this house. You wretched jinx. Ever since marrying you, my sons had nothing but bad luck. And you even gave birth to a little jinx too, always causing trouble and raising a ruckus. This was just her playing dirty and dodging the issue. I looked at her shameless behavior in disgust. Looking at Lin Kun's cowardly expression, a wave of frustration surged within me. I turned to him with a cold face and said, "Lin Kun, do you hear these words? I gave birth to your child, and this is how your mother treats me. Can't you think for yourself, Lin Kun?" By the time I finished speaking, my eyes were already red with tears. For the first time, Lin Kun shouted back at his mom, "Mom, do you have to push things until my family falls apart before you're satisfied?" My mother-in-law was stunned by his outburst. It took her a moment to snap out of it. Then she rushed forward and started clawing at Lin Kun. "You think you're too good for us now? After all I've done to raise you, and you repay me like this?" The room descended into chaos as Lin Kun dodged left and right, everyone running around in a frenzy. My dad couldn't bear to watch any longer. He cleared his throat, interrupting the spectacle. "All right, that's enough from all of you. This divorce must happen. Lin Kun, do you remember what you said when you wanted to marry Tingting? You swore that you wouldn't let her suffer even the slightest bit. But here we are today, in front of me, and you failed to keep a single one of your promises. I can only imagine, when I'm not around, what kind of life my daughter has been enduring." My mother-in-law repeated her stance. "Fine, the marriage can end, but don't even think about getting the house." My dad was visibly upset too. "We're not interested in taking your house. We just want to get back the money we spent on the renovations." My mother-in-law let out an arrogant laugh. "We bought that house. That has nothing to do with you. If you want the renovation money back, then take the renovations with you." She laughed hysterically as if she had one. Meanwhile, Lin Kun stood there like a mute. His head hung low, saying nothing. My dad, who is usually a very patient man, now had a hint of anger on his face. At that moment, I knew he wouldn't be able to get the money back, and didn't want to get into more pointless arguments. I reached out and gently tugged on my dad's sleeve, shaking my head at him. "Dad, let it go. We'll deal with it later. Let's focus on finalizing the divorce first." My cousin frowned and said, "Tingting, don't worry, we've got your back." I shook my head. "Brother, I know and I appreciate it, but I just want to end this quickly without any more drama. Let's get this over with." Seeing this, my mother-in-law smiled even more smugly. "Fang Tingting, it's good that you finally know your place." I calmly pressed a button on my phone and smiled back at her. "You said if we want the money, we should take the renovations back with us, right?" "Exactly," she said. "If you have the guts, take it back." I smiled even more meaningfully. "Good, that's exactly what we'll do." Then I turned to Lin Kun and said, "Let's go finalize the divorce this afternoon." Lin Kun's eyes turned red as he looked at me without saying a word. I closed my eyes for a moment, then slightly turned my head, refusing to meet his gaze. Lin Kun remained silent, but my mother-in-law immediately spoke up. "Go right now. Lin Kun, get this divorce done now. Let's see if they really dare." Lin Kun clutched his head and shouted, "Fine. I'll do it. Is that what you want?" He stood up like a trapped beast. And after registering, a month later we got the divorce certificate. Outside the government office, Lin Kun grabbed my hand, making one last plea. "Tingting, the child is still so young. Can't we not divorce, please? Let's just move out and live on our own, okay?" I slowly pried his fingers off, one by one. "It's not about where we live. It's about your attitude. Every time your mom made a scene, when you blamed me, and when you stayed silent." My heart grew colder bit by bit. Lin Kun's face turned pale little by little. I asked him meaningfully, "Are you going to be home this afternoon?" "I'm coming by to pack up my things." Lin Kun quickly replied, "I'll be there. I'll take the day off and come back." I shook my head. "There's no need for that. I don't want to see your parents." As I said this, I deliberately glanced at my former mother-in-law, who had come along with Lin Kun. It was clear she still couldn't believe that I had really divorced Lin Kun. Lin Kun quickly nodded. "I'll take my parents out." Ting Ting, just give me one more chance, okay? I ignored him and simply said, I'll be there at 3 p.m., then turned around, leaving only my back to them. Behind me, I could hear my ex-mother-in-law's nagging voice. Lin-kun, can you show some backbone, please? It's just a woman. With our conditions, we can find someone even better. Mom, it's all your fault. It's all because of you. If you hadn't caused so much trouble, Ting Ting and I wouldn't have ended up divorcing. Weren't you always saying she wouldn't dare to divorce? Didn't you claim we had her under control? Even now, they still think I'm just putting on an act, that I wouldn't really go through with the divorce. Ha, they really dare to imagine that. Ha, it's truly laughable. At 3 p.m., I had my cousin bring some people and called a moving company, and we went straight to the small home that Lin-kun and I once shared. The security guard at the complex saw the commotion we were making and tried to stop me from entering. It took quite a bit of persuasion before they finally let us in. We went upstairs and unlocked the door, and sure enough, no one was home. I waved my hand and directed the movers, take all the furniture out, except for the chairs and stools. Those aren't mine. Once the furniture was moved out, I pointed to the empty room and said, take down all the tiles, the windows too, and the lights. Anything that can be removed, take it down. If it can't be removed, then smash it. Oh, and by the way, I don't need the tiles or anything else anymore, so I'll just give them to you. As soon as I said that, the workers became even more enthusiastic. The tiles from a 100 square meter house could fetch a decent amount of money. By the end of the afternoon, everything that needed to be handled was taken care of. They even helped clean up the debris. I was extremely satisfied. Just as I was about to head downstairs, I ran into my ex-father-in-law, ex-mother-in-law, and my ex-husband, Lin-kun, all with grim expressions. The moment my mother-in-law saw what we were doing, she rushed to push open the door like a madwoman. When she saw the state of the house, she broke down and screamed, Fang Ting Ting, you wretched woman! What have you done? This is robbery. My ex-father-in-law and Lin-kun were equally stunned, staring at the now bare room. I smiled innocently and said, but didn't you say earlier that I could take whatever I paid for during the renovation? So that's exactly what I did. I took what's mine. How is that robbery? My ex-father-in-law lunged forward, intending to hit my cousin, but my cousin grabbed his arm and with a cold sneer said, let's see who dares to touch my sister. Seeing this situation, my ex-father-in-law immediately called the police. I wasn't the least bit worried. After all, when they made those claims earlier, there was evidence left behind. During this time, my ex-mother-in-law started crying loudly, you heartless wretch. You malicious asterisk. Are you trying to leave us with no way to live? While crying, she lunged at me, aiming to scratch my face. I was secretly delighted. Now that my health had fully recovered, and with no need to worrying about maintaining any pretense, I grabbed her by the hair and slapped her twice, hard. These slaps were payback. I still remember that slap my ex-father-in-law gave me before. Thinking about all the trouble this old hag has caused, hatred surged from deep within me. I raised my hand and pinched her. This is for your foul mouth. This is for your foul mouth. And this is for all your nonsense. By the time people managed to pull us apart, I had some scratches on me too, especially on my face. But as for my ex-mother-in-law, aside from the 2 slaps on her face, the rest of her injuries were hidden where no one could see. When we got to the police station and explained the situation, the officer gave the Lin family a tired look. You guys, the divorce agreement is clear. She doesn't want the house. She just wants to take back what she paid for in renovations. What more is there to argue about? Indeed, I added that clause afterward, and the Lin family agreed to it. With no grounds for complaint, my ex-mother-in-law then tried to accuse me of assaulting her. The officer glanced at my scratched-up face and chuckled. At most, this counts as mutual fighting, a family dispute. If you really want us to handle it, both sides can spend a few days in detention. My ex-mother-in-law immediately backed down, having gained nothing from this situation. My ex-mother-in-law, not willing to give up, started urging Lincoln to keep arguing with me about the house. Lincoln's face turned bright red, and to everyone's surprise, he actually pushed his mom aside and said, "Enough. Stop talking about it. Tomorrow, you both should just go back to the village. The whole reason you came here in the first place was to help take care of the child. But now, thanks to all your trouble, both the child and my wife are gone. So just hurry back. I'm sick of seeing you both." As soon as he said this, the room fell silent. My ex-mother-in-law, realizing that Lincoln was truly angry, looked deflated like a wilted eggplant with red-rimmed eyes. I, on the other hand, felt an unprecedented sense of satisfaction and walked away without looking back with my cousin. I originally thought that quietly waiting for the divorce certificate would be the end of it, parting peacefully. But half a month later, early one morning, my aunt called me and asked, "Ting Ting, are you really divorcing that Lin family boy?" I was having breakfast at the time and almost spit out my porridge, coughing violently. My mom quickly grabbed the phone. "Auntie, none of us mentioned it. How did you find out?" My aunt sighed. "So it's true then. You should check the family group chat." Panicked, my mom scrambled to find her phone. Ever since I gave birth, I felt constantly drained of energy, and with everything on my mind about the divorce lately, I hadn't been using my phone much. When I finally opened my messages, I saw the family group chat was in chaos. I scrolled up through countless messages and finally figured out what had happened. Lincoln had actually gone into the group chat and claimed that I was seeing another man, even implying that our newborn child wasn't his, claiming the child isn't even his. Now that the truth is out, I'm divorcing him. He said he can't swallow this humiliation, but doesn't know what else to do, so he exposed everything in the family group chat. He also said that not only am I demanding a divorce, but I also want to split the house that his family paid the down payment for, and that I want child support every month. His family and ours argued fiercely about it, and in the end, I supposedly went so far as to bring people over and strip their house down to its bare bones. He said it's outright bullying. Meanwhile, Lincoln's mother is leaving voice messages in the group chat, cursing me nonstop. My parents were absolutely livid after seeing this. But that's not all. Before I could even finish reading the messages, my best friend called me. She said Lincoln posted a long rant on Weibo, recounting how we met, fell in love, and got married, only for me to cheat and demand a divorce, claiming even the child isn't his in this tragic story. He even posted some provocative images along with it. Just after that post, he uploaded a video of the bare-bones house, where his mother tearfully complained that I didn't contribute to buying the house, yet now want to take a share in the divorce, when that didn't work out. I supposedly brought people over to destroy the house. These Weibo posts hadn't been up long before a big influencer reposted them, causing the whole situation to blow up quickly. I followed the link my friend sent me to see for myself, and felt a chill run through my body. I was so furious I wanted to tear Lincoln apart. Seeing how panicked I was, my mom kept asking what we should do. My dad, though, stayed relatively calm. I immediately called our lawyer. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm of anger within me. I meticulously saved screenshots of all the chat logs and posts to preserve them as evidence. 10 minutes later, my dad finished his call and told me what the lawyer said. The lawyer advised us to immediately preserve all evidence and document everything, and proceed to file a lawsuit against Lincoln. He also suggested doing a paternity test. I nodded in agreement. That day, more and more people started calling to ask about the situation. Some were kindly offering advice. Others were just nosy, looking for gossip. And a few were maliciously hoping to see a joke. In the end, I had no choice but to turn off my phone, and soon after, my parents' phones were overwhelmed as well. forcing them to switch theirs off too. The atmosphere at home turned heavy and tense. I looked at my parents, who were deeply worried because of me, and gradually regained my composure, starting to think of ways to fight back. I used a backup phone to call Lin-kun and questioned him, asking what good it would do to spread such shameless lies. Lin-kun said he just didn't want to divorce me. If there isn't another man in your life, then let's live our lives properly together. And I'll take down those Weibo posts and go explain in the family group chat that it was all a misunderstanding. He also said he wouldn't make a fuss over the house anymore, as long as I came back and lived with him. But if I insisted on the divorce, then it had to be because I was involved with another man, and in that case, he would do whatever it takes to expose him. I softened my tone and pleaded with him to take down the false accusations. Lin-kun, after everything we've been through as husband and wife, by posting all this, you're not just insulting me. You're humiliating yourself too. Those fabricated photos, did you have someone Photoshop them? By doing this, you're exhausting the last bit of decency left between us. Yeah, I had them photoshopped. So what, aren't they especially spicy? Fang Tingting, if you make my life miserable, I'll make yours just as unbearable. You think you can just get married and then divorce me so easily? Not a chance. I clenched my fists, trying to steady my trembling body. Lin-kun, you're inhuman. We dated for 3 years and have been married for 2. I've never done anything to betray you. Do you really not know why I want a divorce? When we got married, you said your family would cover the down payment, and my family would handle the renovations. I didn't ask for any bride price. My parents even gave me a car as part of the dowry. What more could you be dissatisfied with? As soon as we got married, you insisted on bringing your parents to live with us. Do you not remember that night when we were sleeping and your mom barged into our room? From that moment, I regretted marrying you, and all the conflicts that followed, I kept enduring them. During childbirth, you all insisted that a naturally delivered baby would be smarter. For such an absurd reason, you disregarded my life and refused to sign the consent form. I poured out all the grievances I had held in for months, one by one, like spilling beans. Lin-kun remained silent. Say something. Lin-kun, did I say anything that was untrue? Fang Tingting, these are just trivial matters. Is it really worth holding onto them for so long? Trivial matters? Lin-kun, just answer me this. Is everything I said true or not? You've been asking for the reasons I want a divorce. These are the reasons. A heart doesn't grow cold overnight, and the decision to leave isn't made in an instant. On the other end of the line, there was a long silence. Finally, Lin-kun spoke. What you said is true. But Tingting, I really didn't know you'd care so much about these small things. Let's just say I was wrong, okay? I'm apologizing to you now. Can't you come back so we can work things out? Lin-kun, what makes you think I would forgive you? I hung up the phone. I looked at the recording saved on my phone and let out a deep breath. If it weren't for getting this recording, I wouldn't have even bothered speaking to him so gently. Now, just the thought of seeing him disgusts me. Over the following week, I spent my time organizing everything from my years with Lin-kun, documenting all the conflicts I had with my mother-in-law since the wedding, and detailing Lin-kun's heartless behavior. I wrote it all down, paired it with images, and included the paternity test results for my daughter and Lin-kun. I also edited together the recordings from when I went to his family's house to discuss the divorce, as well as today's phone conversation. I compiled everything into a short video. In the video, I even shared the receipts from when we renovated the house and attached a lawyer's letter as well. Then I posted it all on Weibo, tagging the influencer who had previously helped Lin-kun spread his lies. I also privately informed my close friends. I asked her to help share it. After all, she's a small influencer with hundreds of thousands of followers. The post quickly caused a massive uproar. The internet exploded. After a week of this going viral, The issue became a local hot topic. People who were neutral before all started siding with me, and those who were already criticizing Lin Kun became even more vicious. The ones who had initially joined Lin Kun in attacking me were confused at first, but then turned on him, cursing him out like never before. Some people even analyzed my photos, videos, and recordings, confirming that there was no tampering or manipulation involved. Eventually, someone dug up Lin Kun's previous photos and proved that there were clear signs of Photoshop. The truth became crystal clear. Lin Kun was shamed to the point that he couldn't lift his head. He kept calling me nonstop, but when I didn't answer, he resorted to texting me, begging me to delete the Weibo post and withdraw the lawyer's letter. He promised he wouldn't dare to do anything like this again. I simply replied, "Let's talk tomorrow at the Civil Affairs office." The next day, accompanied by my cousin, I went to the Civil Affairs office. Lin Kun showed up on time, but he looked disheveled and exhausted. His mother was there too, but this time, she didn't have her usual arrogant demeanor. Instead, there was a trace of resentment in her eyes. Before anyone could say anything, she was the first to speak up. "Fang Tingting, you wretched woman! What lies are you spreading on the internet? Hurry up and delete all that nonsense. Lin Kun doesn't want to drop the lawsuit now, does he?" I ignored her and coldly turned to look at Lin Kun. He glared at his mother, his eyes red with frustration. "Just shut up already after all this trouble. Are you satisfied now?" My ex-mother-in-law was stunned into silence. Lin Kun then turned to me, his voice hoarse. "Tingting, I'll send my mom back to the village. Let's not get divorced, okay?" I couldn't help but smile at his naivety. He really thinks that after everything he's done, there's still a way for us to go back? After all the disgusting things he did? Behind him, his mother's mouth hung open in shock, completely incredulous. But she didn't cause a scene. I guess Lin Kun must have already talked to her about this, though I no longer care about their opinions. Seeing this still gave me a sense of satisfaction. Being sent back to the village by her own son. That must be a bitter pill to swallow. I said calmly, "It's too late for that. Let's go," I added as Lin Kun stood frozen. I raised an eyebrow. "Or do you not care if I keep that Weibo post up?" With a defeated look, Lin Kun followed me into the Civil Affairs office. After getting our divorce certificates, Lin Kun kept staring at me, trying to appear deeply emotional. I sneered, "Where was this deep emotion? When you sided with your mom and refused to give me my share of the house? Where was it? When you spread lies and defamed me online? Where was it? When you tried to drag me through the mud and force me to submit? Tingting, for the sake of our years together as a couple, I'm begging you to delete the post and withdraw the lawsuit, okay? I can't even leave the house anymore. Everyone looks at me like I'm a monster. Behind my back, they whisper and insult me. But it just reminded me, when Lin Kun first posted all those things online, didn't I go through exactly the same experience? I want you to post a public apology online, explain the entire truth, and promise that you will never slander me again for any reason. If you do that, I'll delete the Weibo post. You vicious woman! You have such a black heart. When we were discussing the divorce, you actually recorded everything on video? You wretched being! You came into our lives just to ruin my son. My ex-mother-in-law kept cursing nonstop. I frowned, raised my phone and said, "I'm recording this too. With what you're saying, I can sue you all for defamation." She immediately fell silent. Lin Kun, defeated, agreed, "Fine. I'll apologize." That very night, Lin Kun really did post an apology, explaining the truth behind everything. As promised, I deleted my original post. I then posted a new one, explaining the agreement I had with Lin Kun. Of course, I didn't withdraw the lawyer's letter. After all, I never agreed to that. We're not children. We're a simple "I didn't mean it, and I was wrong" would make everything disappear. 2 days later, something interesting happened online. A netizen dug up that before our divorce, Lin Kun had taken a young girl to a hotel, They even managed to find the check-in records. Suddenly, Lincoln became the prime example of a scumbag. On social media, righteous netizens flooded his Weibo, leaving all kinds of greetings, forcing him to deactivate his account entirely. 3 months later, Lincoln was jailed for defamation, sentenced to 1 year by then. I was vacationing in Hainan with my daughter and parents. The past is over. A new life begins.